This is going to be cool because it's going to be a real eye-opener for hobbyists. A lot of people don't know about, what else we do for global aquaculture.
The first 2 episodes contain a ton of great information about Chad and reed mariculture. But now we're taking things a step further and answering your questions. And now for questions and answers from social media. Lori Johnson asked, which copepod do you recommend to eat dinoflagellates?
That is a tough question. Basically, the only information I have is from papers that I've looked into, people that are doing ecological stuff on copepods and what they're eating out in the ocean. And a lot of the research is being done on pelagic species of copepods like the parvocalinus. And they do indeed consume dinoflagellates out in the ocean. They've been known to do that when other algae species are lacking or if there's seasonality issues. It's not something that they thrive on. But as far as the harpacticoids go, like the tigerpods, there's really, at least I haven't found much information about them eating dinoflagellates. These guys aren't really that picky, but I can imagine if there are diatoms and dinoflagellates in an aquarium, they're probably going to go after the diatoms before they touch the dinos. But yeah, it's something that is not a common part of their diet. So it's tough to say, but that's my answer. Sorry about that. If they're eating it, there's going to be no way to know unless it all disappears, in a couple of days. But keep in mind that even if they are eating it, they're taking in some of the nutrition from the dinos. They're excreting the rest. So you still have a waste issue. You still got to do your water changes. Copepods will eat stuff in a tank, but it's not going anywhere. You still have to get it out of the tank with skimmers and water changes. So yeah, I would never recommend copepods for clearing up dinos in a tank. Would never say that.
Richard Beck had the best question. He wants to know which hair gel you use.
It's axle grease, homemade. Stuff's awesome.
I thought you might like that one. It was my favorite too. Jacob asked, what are the keys to culturing at home?
Well, it depends on the species. The Cyclops, with culturing them, at least what I've found is the key to them is feeding them phytoplankton continuously or semi-continuously throughout the day so that the algae doesn't go to waste. It doesn't create a lot of fouling in the water. They consume it. Next dose comes and they consume it before the next dose comes, so to speak. As far as the calanoid copepods go, the parvocalinus, definitely live algae is very key, and a good live algae culture. You can't just have an isocrisis culture that's, starting off or it's crashing or it doesn't look that good and expect the parvocalinus to do well. So the calanoid copepod, you have to be really good at growing live algae, specifically isocrisis. And so that's what I would recommend for that one. And then as far as the tigriopus go, those guys, they can handle a very, very poor water quality. They can eat a variety of different things. So for those guys, tigriopus, you don't want to keep the culture too clean. You want to let it get a little bit dirty. You don't want to let it go longer than 60 days or so. And try to keep things stable, like with salinity and adding fresh water that's evaporated, things like that. So it's mostly, consistency, having good techniques, and having the right food for them is pretty key. But, looking at your cultures every day, observation is key. Get to know your animals, get a microscope. Those help tremendously.
One of the anonymous questions was whether you recommend tigers as the beginner copepod.
They're easier to work with. They, you can see them a lot easier than some of the other species that are on the market. And they can handle a lot of neglect. They can handle low temperatures, high temperatures, pH swings, salinity swings. It's a very hardy, durable copepod. So it's definitely the beginner's copepod. I would definitely agree with that.
And tigers would also be easiest for using in a sump, right?
Well, it's tough to say because it all depends on what else is in the tank. One size doesn't fit all for this. But tigers have a better chance of survival in a reef tank just because of how hardy that animal is and how durable it is, at least in its own environment in nature. And, they tend to be able to take care of themselves. And they're a little bit bigger, so that's something that you can actually see. If they're growing in your refugium, if they're growing in your tank, and little white specks on the glass, they're a lot easier to see than some of the other species of copepods, like the tisbees and the apocyclops. Those guys are smaller overall when they reach their maximum size. And so Tigriopus is definitely one to do.
And the apocyclops, they are not that much more difficult, and they also take the non-viable algae, correct?
Right, yeah, just like the Tigriopus, you don't need to feed them live phytoplankton. The methods that I'm using right now are more intensive. You can certainly culture apocyclops very similar to the way I culture Tigriopus, just a batch culture, set it up, feed it for a few months, and then harvest the whole thing. Whereas with the apocyclops, I'm doing it a little bit different. I'm doing it the way we would want to do it, where we'd want to be harvesting nauplii every day. So if you were to do it the way I'm doing it, semi-continuous feed, passively harvesting nauplii every day, it's definitely a step up from just putting copepods in a tank and feeding it once a day and not doing anything. It's definitely, you definitely have to create more of a regime of tasks that you're doing every day. So it's a little bit more, there's a little bit more work to it, for sure, for apocyclops. Just like we dedicate ourselves to our reef tanks and keeping all of our animals alive, to me, those same morals apply to copepods.
Susan C. asked, what's the best way to keep a reef's pod population steady?
Probably the best method if you're going to want to keep a good stock of copepods in your tank is keep them going in the refugium and also culture them externally from the tank so you have that backup. The other cool thing about Tigriopus is you can take a little bit of the culture and put it in a bottle in clean salt water and put them in the refrigerator, and it's the ultimate backup. You can keep them refrigerated for weeks, and so if your cultures crash, you have your backups, and you simply rotate your backups. People do this with rotifers. Rotifers don't last that long in refrigeration, but tigripods will last you weeks in refrigeration. So they are also an excellent way to keep them backed up is refrigeration. So, but definitely culturing them externally, trying to promote the population in the refugium and in the main tank, doing all three of those things, plus cold banking them, storing them, you're going to have better success. You're going to have better backups instead of everything crashes and you're calling up your copepod distributor and asking for more.
James C. asked why the apocyclops works, and that's because of refrigeration, right?
Yeah, I've found that the apocyclops do not do well in refrigeration, and neither do the parvicalinists. Parvicalinists typically are all dead within 24 hours below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. They just can't handle it. Apocyclops, it takes them a little bit longer to die off. Takes them about a week at that temperature. And Tigriopus just blow them all away.
Katie asked which live food you sell the most of to breeders.
So the most popular live food that we sell are rotifers. Easiest to culture. You can culture them at high density. You can enrich them. Definitely rotifers are the most dominant live feed organism that we sell. And then second to that are the Tigriopus. But as far as aquaculture goes, many of our aquaculture customers that are breeding fish are buying rotifers, they're buying parvicalinists, and they're now using apocyclops. And so those three species are what we're selling to people breeding fish.
Brian asked, are copepods better than rotifers as a first food?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. If you're feeding your copepods an inferior species of algae, or just one species of algae for that matter, then you are depriving your larval fish of certain essential compounds. So for instance, if you're feeding let's say you're feeding apocyclops nothing but nanophoropsis, then you're not getting DHA into that animal. The copepods might be getting some DHA from the females that are producing them, but without that in their diet, they will lack that fatty acid. And we know in aquaculture, marine ornamental aquaculture, that DHA, omega-3 fatty acids, these things are absolutely essential for development of these organisms. And so that's very important to note, and that's something that we're consistently working on.
Cheryl Taylor asked what the optimal phyto combination is for A. penamensis copepods.
Well, currently I'm working with our RotiGrow products. So these are products that can be frozen. So species of algae that are in these blends can be frozen for long-term storage. So I'm using our RotiGrow Plus. I'm experimenting with RotiGrow One Step, and I'm also using our green water feed. RotiGreen Omega, I'm working on that as well. Those are all largely based on Nanophoropsis, but there are other species of algae in the blend, Tetraselmis, and we also employ some lipids into that food. These are all just products that I'm using that we currently have. I can't get real specific on what our blend consists of because it's proprietary. We definitely want to develop or design a product specifically for Cyclops. And there's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done with that. We need to try different feeds, keep them on that for a certain amount of time, harvest the nuclei, freeze them, and send them off to a lab. So it's time consuming, it's a little bit expensive to have fatty acid tests done all the time. So we got to be slow and methodical about it. But there's species of algae that we want to add into our blends. We want to, try to get some diatoms in there. We definitely want to get Isochrysis or Pavlova into the diet to add more DHA. There are other ways to get lipids into these animals without using phytoplankton. So there's definitely some things we're looking at. We have grown them on our one step. We've sent nuclei off for fatty acid profiling. And they did have DHA in them. They are getting that fatty acid from that blend into their bodies and into the nuclei. So we were very pleased to see that.
One of my biggest hopes is that this video clears up any confusion about non-viable algae. I've never understood the confusion.
Yeah, the whole thing with live is better and the live algae kind of thing. It's just a lot of marketing and advertising. We don't really get that in aquaculture. There's people that understand our algae, they understand the use of our algae. And so they're not afraid of it. But there's people in the hobby that, there's a little bit of fear that if the algae isn't alive, it's not going to work. And that's only because those things have been planted in the heads of hobbyists by other people. And these people, for whatever reason, it's either marketing or who knows. We know it works. Our customers know it works. Our rotifers that we've had going for over 10 years on non-viable algae, that's a testament. I've been working with Cyclops since day one on non-viable algae. So if you're listening to this, trust me, it works. And you can for yourself, you can try it for yourself, just like thousands of other people have done all over the world. So our rotifers don't lie.
Don H. asked what message you would send to new hobbyists to explain the importance of your products.
Yeah, basically, if you're just getting into this, copepods primarily are used to keep certain animals alive that are coming out of the wild that refuse to eat anything but live. And then after that, it's all about, maybe increasing biodiversity in your aquarium or just culturing something new and trying something different and culturing copepods just because it can be done. If you want to keep those copepods alive in a reef tank, if you want to try to make sure that they have enough nutrition to populate while you're feeding filter feeders, phytoplankton is one of the best ways to do that. And not just a single species, it's always offer a blend. These copepods will consume the phytoplankton that's drifting around in the water column, so that's a good source of nutrition for them, and it will help them improve their population and their reproduction. The other organisms in the reef tank are consuming the phytoplankton, especially if you have a reef tank. If you have a mixed reef tank, you've got filter feeding organisms like feather duster worms and things like that. These animals are constantly filtering the water, and phytoplankton is very, very good for those organisms. So just keep in mind that you might be intentionally feeding copepods the phytoplankton. You're being deliberate about it. You're also feeding other organisms in the aquarium that are consuming a particle of that size, and they're gaining from the nutrition as well.
Leslie asked if it's possible to add too much to an aquarium.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't overfeed anything, and phytoplankton is definitely something that people need to keep in mind. And it all depends on the concentration of the phytoplankton that you're dosing. And so you just want to be very conservative. You want to start off slow. Algae does not immediately begin to decompose in an aquarium. It takes days for it to decompose. But you've got to keep in mind that if you have a new tank and you're feeding it a lot of algae, that's no good. You don't need to be doing that, especially if you're under like 4 or 6 months. Your tank is that it's not necessary. I know people that will put copepods in a new tank as they're cycling it because Cyclops can handle that cycling. They can handle the ammonia spike and things like that. They're perfectly adapted to that. And I know people that will add copepods initially, feed them a little bit of phytoplankton here and there while they monitor water quality and test that ammonia spike, and then the nitrite, and then the nitrate. So while you cycle your tank, you can do it with, you can feed them a little bit of algae, just a tiny bit of algae every day. Depends on the volume of your tank. But yeah, definitely what goes in must come out. Doesn't matter what you're feeding. Flake food, frozen food, pellets, live feeds, it doesn't matter what it is. What goes in must come out. And so you got to make sure you've got the right filtration. So keep in mind that animals that are consuming the phytoplankton and other things that you're feeding, they're breaking it down and they're releasing waste. The more you feed, the more waste that's generated by your animals. So you got to keep that in mind. So we always recommend start off conservatively, start off slow, and go from there.
Sean asked how often to add pods.
So it's really tough to say how often you should be adding copepods to a tank after you've initially seeded the tank with them. The toughest question of all. No, and it's because, every tank is different. It depends on the predators, how voracious they are. Mandarins can eat a lot of copepods, so can seahorses. But, a good way to help yourself and back yourself up is to culture them externally. And then always, keep an eye on your animals. If they're looking like they're starving, if they're looking a little thin or emaciated, and it's not a disease, then yeah, maybe they've wiped out your zooplankton.
Lisa Petrell Marino asked if you could contribute one key element to your success, what would it be?
I'd have to say an experience in aquaculture, and not just getting into one job and staying in that job. I've gone out and I've tried to learn as much as I can. I've tried to work in as many different places as I can to get a feeling of what it is that I like to do and where I want to be, and not giving up. Perseverance is huge. And those are the same kind of standards that we apply to ourselves when taking care of our reef tanks. It is severe. You're going to have problems. You're going to have ups and downs. There's going to be issues, but don't give up. Just stick with it. You're going to have bad days. But the cool thing about aquaculture is we make all kinds of mistakes, and every time you make a mistake, there's a moment to learn.
Daniel Presnell wants to know how to keep concentrated cultures from crashing.
Concentrated cultures, harvest them. So basically harvesting, so let's talk about rotifers. Rotifers can get quite dense. You can get super dense cultures with rotifers. 10,000 per milliliter can be achieved. When you get into that kind of density, you need to keep an eye on oxygen, and waste, things like that. The best way to keep your cultures from getting dense is to quite simply harvest them. We harvest our rotifer culture every single day. We harvest 30% every day. We're getting roughly 750 million rotifers a day. And the population comes right back up to that by the next day. And so that's the best way to do rotifers. It harvests a certain percentage, 20-30% every day, and that keeps the culture going. It also keeps the rotifers young and vigorous. When it comes to copepods, there's a couple of different things you can do. You can do the batch method, which I do with the tigriopus. I toss them into a tank, we feed them for a couple of months, and then we just harvest the whole tank. And we allow them to get really dense. They can handle very high density. And as far as the Cyclops go, I employ a very different strategy with that copepod. I make sure that my adults are at a very specific density, and I remove the babies every day. And then maybe that tank lasts for maybe 30 to 60 days, and then I just start a new tank with young adults that are ready to start reproducing. So there's definitely different methods, different strategies to employ. It depends on the kind of live feed organism you're working with. So yeah, those are a couple of good ways to keep the cultures from getting too dense, because density kills. These things like rotifers, they will multiply until it's they've reached maximum capacity, and then the whole thing crashes, the whole system crashes, whether oxygen is limiting, or the ammonia gets too high, or they just get too old. And so yeah, you definitely have to keep an eye on culture densities. Definitely good. Those are good questions.
Sean asked, are all the RMI products available to hobbyists?
Oh yeah. I mean, anybody can buy our products from us on our website. And so some of the aquaculture products, like our RotaGrow products, you can absolutely purchase them. You can buy a liter bag, turn it into aliquots, freeze it, take a small amount out, and feed it up. Rotifer customers are doing that. Our clownfish breeder customers are already doing that. These blends have been available on the market for years now. And so absolutely hobbyists can tap into some of our aquaculture feeds that are being used by professionals.
With all of these new products, Jerry wants to know if PhytoFeast is used anymore.
Our PhytoFeast is a perfectly acceptable blend. The PhytoFeast concentrate has a 6-month shelf life. It contains 6 different species of algae, so you've definitely got your ichthyocrisis and your pavlova in there, which are rich in DHA. It's got diatoms, it's got nanochloropsis and tetraselmis. So that is a perfectly acceptable blend. And the only reason why I'm using our Rotor One Step is because it can be frozen.
Clayton would like to know more about the freezing process.
And freezing algae is very important to many of our big aquaculture companies because they can buy a lot of it at once, store it in the freezer, and save on shipping costs. Instead of buying like every 3 months, the shipping costs are very expensive for those people. And so for them to be able to freeze the food for 2 years is huge. It saves them a lot of species that we can freeze, nanochloropsis, tetraselmis. They have very durable walls, and we're just talking specific cells. We're not talking about a complex organism. These are single cellular thing, phytoplankton, algae. And so in the freezing process, depending on how you freeze, duration of freezing, temperature, there's things that, you definitely have to pay attention to that. As far as freezing goes, they can be frozen for years. We've taken batches out after 2 years, and we've done this repeatedly. We look at the cells. We make sure that they're fully intact, that they're there. The cell count or the dry weight is exactly as it was when it went into the bag or into the container. And so that's something that we're really good at. We're really good at being able to freeze certain species of algae for long-term storage, because that is really important to aquaculture and to our customers for a variety of reasons, cost being one of them. The key is to never give up, and if you're really determined, if you want to work with live feeds, if you have something you're breeding, something you want to keep alive that requires live feeds, then you just have to keep all of these things in mind. And luckily, there are people like us that can help. There are forums, there are tech support systems, there's a lot of these things in place to help you through it all. Because it is not easy. A lot of people don't get it the first time. It's basically like with reef tanks and keeping aquariums. You got to expect some sort of failure, but you also have to learn from your failures, keep things going, and in the end, it's all about the welfare of the animals and keeping the animals alive and happy. If you're ever at a trade show in the United States, MACNA, Reefapalooza, Aquatic Experience, Reef Stock, please come and check us out. There's a lot of different things that can be seen, new technological advances, a lot of cool animals on display. And you can come talk to us, and we'll talk with you on a technical level and maybe get some free copepods. We're adding 50% more Tigriopus, Tigger pods to each bottle. So that's something that's up and coming, so keep an eye on that. We have enough protocols that are basically built in to our Tigger pod culture. Things are working. We're overproducing them, so we figured we would just add some extra to the bottle and see how it goes. I'm sure our customers won't mind. So, and they're just, the copepods are just beautiful. They're fun to watch. They're fun to look at under the microscope. They have multiple different stages of development. There's a lot that can be learned about them. It opens up basically a Pandora's box. Cyclops panamensis, we're calling it the new rotifer. In fact, recently, within the past month, I've set up a 1,000-liter recirculating aquaculture system with this species, and it's working quite well. We love to interact with our customer base. If you're a person that buys one bottle of Phyto Feast a year, so when we hear from you, we will still interact with you. We accept all questions. We even answer questions about other people's products, about our competitors' products. We're here for you, and we understand your pain. If you're struggling, if you want to make it work, we can help you. As part of this fun talk and discussion we've had about feeds, we are offering some free copepods to one lucky winner. It's basically going to be 2 bags of 50,000 Cyclops panamensis in each bag, so 100,000 total, 2 bottles of Tigger pods, and a 6-ounce bottle of Phyto Feast. And this will help you get started with potentially culturing the Cyclops and Tigger pods separately, and then also you can get some of those animals into your reef tank immediately. Visit our website, learn something, maybe comment about it, go to our Facebook page and like it. Let us know that you're serious, you want to win.
Wow, not only did Chad share all of this great information with us, but RMI is giving away 100,000 Apos Cyclops panamensis, 2 bottles of Tiger Pods, and a 6-ounce bottle of Phyto Feast. Chad's PDF, my blog, and all the contest rules will be listed in the comments. But the winner must be subscribed to the Seahorse Whisperer YouTube channel, and they must like Read Mariculture and the Seahorse Whisperer Society on Facebook. The biggest requirement is sharing this video, and there might just be a bonus prize for the person who shares the most. Good luck, and thank you so much for watching. Apos Cyclops panamensis. Did I say it right? Okay. Yeah. And we'll just, I'll do my best. I'll practice. Apocalypse. Say it one more time. That it's say it one more time. The pod.
Apocyclops.
Okay. So are the apocyclops? And I'm not going to be able to say it again. Say it one more time. I'm so sorry. Apocyclops. The I'm terrible with these names. Apocyclops. Did I get it? Did I get it right? Yep. So Apocyclops. Apocyclops. I'm going to grab my paper, so I'm not going anywhere. In your opinion, jeez. Because I'm going to think of something I forgot to ask and ask you.
No, for your customers. For people listening.
No customers yet, but the smaller supplement. I know I'm breaking up. Yep. I'm sorry. Okay.
No, it's okay.
All right. So give me 10 seconds. I got to check my notes here. All right. White because it'll work on green screen.
No, right on.
You probably can't hear me. I just realized. Microphone needs to go. I don't know what changed, but it's. Okay. I hit it on my end. It's because I set down the microphone. I'm so good at this. Jeez, I'm sorry. She threw me off completely. Actually, let me rephrase the question. How? I hate that echo. Industrial and so on and so forth. I got you. All right.
Wait, you said rotor plus. It's RG complete.
I'm sorry.
Kind of the starter key.
Well, that part I'm going to let you do, and we'll just delete me out. But anyway, I'll just say yes. That's awesome because it helped me. All right. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. Were you done? Sorry. And I will have to rewatch this to make sure I got it all correctly. But right. No. I know. And that was really for me more than the video. I was just curious. Yep. But I'm trying to think because I know there's other things. Mainly, I mean that you didn't cover. I'm not doing anything. But I appreciate you.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Kelly. It was great being on your show here, and I hope all of your viewers were well entertained.